I guess we shall start. And thank you so much for creating time to be here so that we can have this conversation, we can have this discourse around decriminalization of suicide. And it's a great win for us as the citizens of Kenya, as civic actors, as people, as communities. And I know a lot has gone into this process, and that is a conversation that we shall be having this evening. So allow that I start with the introductions, because the first time to be here, maybe your first time to interact with us, your first time to interact with Inuka. So feel welcomed. You're not a stranger. We've been having these conversations on different topics, and we felt it's also important to enlighten ourselves on the process, the milestones, the challenges that have gone into decriminalization of suicide. So your moderator of today is Salima Njoki Masharia. I coordinate the Wellness Resource Hub at Inuka Kenya Ni Sisi, a program that we implement in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda that seeks to take care of our well-being as civic actors. Also being cognizant that the work we do is challenging, can be tedious, can be stressful, we can get burnout. So this program seeks to offer the required service, the required interventions, the required support. And we will encourage you, if you've us on our social media platforms, please take time and follow us, because we share a lot of resources, a lot of materials that can be beneficial to us. So today, our speaker is no a stranger to most of us, because he's been in the space for better part, okay, I don't want to disclose his age, but he has been with us in the street, in the clamor even for the new constitution, is a person that is known to me, a person who was in the front line for the clamor of the new constitution and a better Kenya. Oyoko Odhiambo, but I don't want to do the introductions because he shall do that. But allow me, as we kickstart this session, just to request that we observe 1 minute of silence in remembrance of Charity Muturi, who was a petitioner in this country, but who died this last year, actually. So it's been a loss, because she didn't see what she fought for, what she was passionate about, but we're enjoying her fruits today. So kindly, wherever you are, let's observe a minute of silence, commemorating Charity Muturi. Asanteni sana, and so that we also have good interactions, we get to know who is in the room. Please, you can just chat your name. We use the chat box, just indicate your name, where you're joining us from, so that at least we can also use that platform to interact, to get to know who is with us today. And if you have any questions, point of clarification, suggestions, kindly just use the chat section. And I think some point our communications officer, Joanne, shall be opening the sessions for questions. But at this juncture, allow me to invite Odhiambo Oyoko to take it up from there. Asanteni sana na karibuni.
Thank you very much. So my name is Odhiambo Oyoko. I'm a mental health advocate working on wellness, prevention, and education, and also advocacy on mental health in Kenya. So let me state from the outset that I'm not a mental health professional. So here in terms of education and in terms of just learning from lived experience in terms of suicide, in terms of mental health in general. So, so today we're going to talk about the decriminalization of suicide in Kenya, which is a consequence of a ruling by the High Court in January of 2025, after so many years. And so I think it was very appropriate for our host Salma to pay tribute to Charity Muturi. Charity Muturi was someone who was known to me personally and many of us in the mental health advocacy space, and she was very passionate about this particular issue around decriminalization of suicide, and she was indeed one of the petitioners in the case that was brought before the High Court, and and unfortunately, as Salima has stated, she died last year. But I think it's a fitting tribute that her work has come to fruition. So having said that, I'll just start. So I'm going to share my presentation. Yeah. So I think first I need to give a disclaimer. The content that we are going to discuss today is issues around mental health and suicide, and um, it might cause some distress to some of our audience, and so I think just have that in mind in case you're uncomfortable. I think you're free to just I think leave if you are if you find the topic distressing. Uh, then I also need to say, in case you are having any distress, uh, uh, sh- these are some of the resources that you can reach out to. And as I said, I'm not affiliated to any of these organizations, so this is just for information purposes only. Okay, maybe I can move on. Yeah, so I was saying in terms of, I hope you can see the slide. In terms of suicide, this is the working definition that we're using. So suicide is when people harm themselves with the goal of ending their life, and they die as a result. So there's the issue of you want to end your life and then you die as a result. Suicide attempt is when you harm yourself with the goal of ending your life, but you do not die. So that's what you call a suicide attempt. Um, then I'm on the next slide. Stop me if you can't see the slide. So in terms of suicide, part in suicide advocacy, one of the things we try to do, and I hope we'll also do it here when we come to the discussion, is to avoid certain terms which stigmatize people or do not provide the factual information. So one of the things is committing suicide or committed suicide, failed suicide, successful suicide, completed suicide. Those are terms that are judgmental, not factual, and do not take into account the complexity of what suicide is and the psychological, biological, and social factors that revolve around suicide. And when we discuss in detail how suicide was criminalized and attitude towards suicide, you'll see why these terms are not appropriate for us to address properly the issue around suicide. So the terms that we prefer is died by suicide, suicide attempt, or a survivor of suicide attempt, or a survivor of suicide loss, which is a relative of somebody who died by suicide. So those are the terms that, in terms of suicide prevention advocacy, we prefer that we use instead of the other terms which are judgmental and really are not helpful in terms of suicide prevention. So also when we're having the discussion, I think let's not get into details of any particular incident that you may want to give us an example. I think let's avoid that. Manner of death, let's avoid that. Methods used, and also let's respect also the privacy of anybody who might have died of suicide that we know. Let's also try to use neutral and factual language to also decrease stigma, because that's part of what we are doing today. The reason why we don't we should not be discussing details of suicide, especially in public, is that evidence has shown that sometimes when these are discussed and even the methods used, they are what are called copycat suicide. So people who are in distress, who read or hear about such events, may themselves um, have suicide attempts. So it's also part of safeguarding also other people. And we see a lot of this, especially in the media, when they're discussing death by suicide or suicide attempts. They tend to give very graphic details, and people also try to invade the privacy of people by trying to like speculate about the possible quote unquote reasons or factors, which is not, I think, helpful because we never really know what people are undergoing, and we also need to respect the privacy. This is mostly for it's not really an attempt to educate or do anything, but simply to be sensational, to sell news, and also uh, be salacious. I think just getting to somebody's personal life. So I think also in this discussion, I would encourage us to respect people's privacy and also not to get into details in terms of particular incidences. I could state a lot of incidences that have happened in the past 1 month, but I don't think that would be helpful for us. And we also don't want to trigger people who might be in distress and who are listening in the audience. So let's all be let's all safeguard each other. Uh, so in terms of suicide, some of the risk factors for suicide are a history of suicide attempts. If you've had a suicide attempt before, then it's quite possible. I mean, that could be a risk factor for subsequent suicide attempts. Others are mental disorders like major depression and also bipolar spectrum disorders, alcohol and substance abuse disorders. We also have people who might be having chronic pain, especially those who might be having chronic illnesses, and who might be in pain for whatever reason. Then also people, if you have a family history of a mental disorder or substance abuse, which means your relatives have a mental disorder or substance abuse disorder. Then also a family history of suicide attempts. If someone in your family has had a suicide attempt or died by suicide. Then also family violence, including physical or sexual abuse. People who've had encounters with the criminal justice system, who've been in jail or who've been released, and maybe are having trouble reintegrating back uh, to the society or for whatever reason. And then exposure either directly or indirectly to other suicidal behavior, such as that of family members, peers, and celebrities. And this is the point I was making about copycat suicides, which is very prevalent, especially in Western countries. So when a celebrity dies by suicide, you tend to have um, people who somehow identify with that particular celebrity also dying by suicide or having suicide attempts, or maybe if you've seen or witnessed suicidal behavior, that's also a risk factor for suicide. Um, then, so 9 types of causes. So risk factor is like what predisposes you to suicide. So this is time of the major causes that are associated with suicide. Like I said, mental health problems or disorders or conditions, and then issues around bullying, maybe being subjected to prejudice or stigma because of gender, disability, or sexual identity, abuse, domestic, sexual, or physical, bereavement, losing one's relative is also one of the common causes of suicide. Also, relationships in terms of uh, romantic relationships, if come to an end, that also is a very common cause of suicide. I think you've seen a few cases in the media in the past few weeks or months. And then long-term physical pain or illness. If somebody has a chronic illness for quite some time, that tends to cause mental distress, and sometimes such persons have suicide attempts or die by suicide. Big major changes in life, such as retirement and or redundancy. And remember when we had for those who are old enough in the early in the in the 90s, we had what was called the golden handshake, where quite a number of people who are working for the government and related agencies were being retrenched, um, or being retired, and we had quite a significant incidents in terms of suicide as a consequence of that, because of change. Money problems, of course, and I think we all know the situation that all of us are currently undergoing. Um, then, of course, issues around housing problems, homelessness, isolation and loneliness, which is a major issue now in terms of mental health. We are increasingly being living very isolated lives. We tend to connect more on social media, but not in terms of one-to-one connections. But it's not social media is of course not a substitute for one-to-one connections. So loneliness is increasingly, even in our society, becoming a problem. Being incarcerated in prison uh, uh, is a problem, especially if you feel that you are unjustly incarcerated or the conditions seem hopeless or you are incarcerated for a long period. Feelings of inadequacy or feeling like you're a failure. Uh, then, of course, it's around addiction and substance abuse, alcohol addiction, and others. Then, of course, maternal mental health issues around pregnancy, childbirth, and postnatal depression. And then issues around conflicts around your sexual or gender identity. That also is a factor in terms of suicide. Cultural practices like forced marriage, especially for girls who are underage. That could be a trigger for having suicidal feelings. And then, of course, in general, also expect what you perceive to be the expectations of society in terms of how you should act or how you should behave or how you should achieve certain milestones in your life. Um, Let me also state here that in some societies, suicide is seen as a way of restoring your honor. If you look at, for example, in Japan, if you are dishonored, if you go against some norms in society, one of the ways in which you restore your honor and that of your family is through what is called ritual suicide. It's called harakiri in Japan. So that's also one of the issues around suicide that it's not commonly understood. So if you look at suicide in Kenya, it's of course a major problem, and I think you've seen quite a lot of reporting in the news, and I think even in our own circles, in our social lives, uh, we've had incidences. We've known people, our friends, our colleagues, and others who have had encounters with suicide, either in terms of suicide attempts or death by suicide. Um, we don't know exactly how many suicides are there in Kenya and suicide attempts are there in Kenya because there's no way of collecting reliable data as we speak. I serve in the uh, National Suicide Prevention Committee, which is under the Division of Mental Health of the Ministry of Health. And one of the things we are trying to do is get reliable data on suicide in Kenya through surveillance in terms of the registrar of deaths, in terms of the mortuaries and hospitals, just to try to get an indication of that. So there's been data that is being collected, but um, the system is not really properly set up to undertake a proper surveillance. But I think in the next few years, we'll have a system where there'll be standard reporting from the various entities like the registrar of deaths, the mortuaries and hospitals and other facilities, so that you have an accurate picture of how many people die by suicide in Kenya every day. But the estimation from secondary sources by the WHO is 6 to 1 per 100,000. This is an estimation. Even if you look at the incidences that we've seen from the media in the past, in the past weeks or months, you can see that this is a gross underestimation. But I think everybody agrees that we have a major problem in terms of suicide in Kenya. And one of the reasons, which is why we are here today, is the issue around um, decriminalization of suicide in Kenya, which also contributes to undermining efforts at suicide prevention and responses. Um, so maybe you could look at also attitudes towards suicide in Kenya, and I think in our traditional societies, and this has been carried forward to these contemporary times. Uh, Suicide was a very taboo subject. Among the Southern Luo of Kenya, of which I am a member, there's a belief that anybody who dies by suicide would become a ghost and would punish people who speak at their funeral. So what happens? I think if I've even seen this in recent past is those who die by suicide are not even buried within the home, and in among the southern law of Kenya, it's being buried within the home is considered an honor. Being buried outside the home is considered uh, shameful. And then in some instances, the dead people are canned, and then for the southern law, mourning is prohibited. So the people who die by suicide are shamed, and children are not named after them. And one of the traditions of the southern law of Kenya is naming children after elders or older people. So you can see, and I think many of us from different communities, in the African context, you have your own traditions. But I think similarly, broadly, This is a reflection of how attitudes of how people who die by suicide or people who have suicide attempts are treated, and this contributes to, and this is carried forward to even modern times in various respects. And so this contributes towards the attitudes that people have towards suicide in Kenya. And also in terms of religion, many of the religious, and I know many of you are religious, and I think you are very familiar with their attitudes towards suicide. There was a pope called Saint Pius who had stated that people who die by suicide would be denied a Christian funeral. I would assume those maybe the Catholics can tell, but I think this has since changed. I think in many areas, but still, even within religious settings, even within Christian settings, and I think most of you who belong to that religion are full aware of the attitudes towards suicide. Islam too, and the hadith or sayings attributed to the Prophet say those who die by suicide will suffer hellfire, and they'll not only that, but they'll continue to have pain depending on the method of their suicide. So you can see attitudes towards suicide are very entrenched in our traditions, our religion, our cultures. And part of it is because suicide is very little, is not well understood. Even now, suicide is not well understood, but it's better understood as a mental health issue. So these norms, these values, culture, traditions, belief systems have a great impact um, in laws governing suicide, and in turn, even the laws themselves have an impact on issues around stigma and discrimination. So if you look at how did we, because that's the subject that we have today, is how did suicide become a crime in Kenya? And as you know, Kenya had a period of 100 years of British colonial rule since the 1890s, when the Imperial British East African Company first came to Kenya, and subsequently Kenya became a British colony. And so what happened is that when this process was happening, British common law, which is the law in the UK, in England, was imported to Kenya. In most cases, it was imported wholesale into Kenya and became codified in Kenyan law. In terms of the British or England, the issues around criminalization of suicide started in 967 in the Common Era, or 967 AD, if you prefer. There's this King Edgar of England who so he created a law that, and see, at that time the king was the absolute ruler. So he created a law that said that anybody who died by suicide, the his or her property would go to the feudal lord. So Britain was a society that was governed by uh, the, what are they called, the land and property class. So the land property class are the people who owned property. So there was the king, then there was the church, Church of England or whatever, and then there was the people who owned property. And if you know in England a bit about England, you know the House of Lords. So these were the people who were served at the House of Lords, but mostly there were people who had property and who controlled a lot of property and had tenants and that kind of thing. So the king said, if you die by suicide, all your any property that you have will go to the particular lord of the area where you reside. So and then later on, the property went directly to the king or queen at the time. This happened until 1822 when that law was repealed. But when King Egda made this law, there was then subsequently codified a law that made suicide attempt a criminal offense, which is a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor is a relatively minor offense, so that is punishable by a short jail time or a fine. So after King Edgar made that edict about people who die by suicide, then subsequently this developed into a law that criminalized suicide. And partly also this was influenced by the cultural and religious attitudes of the time. You remember England was the Church of England was very prominent in terms of ruling England because the king or queen are also the head of the titular head of that church. So it became a common law crime in the 13th century, and was only repealed in England in 1961. So in 1930, a penal code was published in what was then Kenya colony, and so this was the law that was in England was imported to Kenya wholesale. So it was imported as Section 226 of the Penal Code, which classifies attempted suicide as a misdemeanor, punishable by 2 years imprisonment or a fine of both. So then you can now see how issues around history, issues around property rights, culture, religion, and beliefs played a role in criminalizing suicide, in making suicide attempts to be a criminal offense, and this was for us in Kenya a legacy of colonial rule. But also when this law came into Kenya, it also found our existing attitudes among our indigenous communities, which basically endorsed that as something of a taboo, of something that was a violation of societal norms, and so it became very entrenched in our society, because, like I told you, even our traditional African society at the time and even now, there are very negative attitudes towards issues around suicide. So then, criminalization. What does criminalization of suicide do? One is that survivors of course, people who die by suicide can't be subjected to a prosecution because they're already dead. So it's survivors of suicide. So you attempt a suicide, but you don't die. You're subjected to prosecution and punishment. So instead of getting help, the people you deal with are the police. And there was an incident. I won't go into the details. A few weeks ago, of someone who had a suicide attempt, and the institution where that person where that happened put out a statement saying, as soon as he's out of, because the person suffered as injuries, so they said, okay, as soon as that person is healed, the police are waiting to speak to him, and this was coming after after the decriminalization of suicide by judiciary, so which was very which I think was should not have been the case. Then criminalization of suicide also means those who have feelings of suicide, or what we call suicide ideation, people who are thinking of harming themselves with a view to ending their lives, because that's where it starts. It starts with feeling and thoughts of self-harm. They don't seek help. So if you go to a hospital, then you fear that you may be you may be ostracized because it's treated as a crime and not a mental issue. So then also we have it also entrenches stigma. Criminalization of suicide also entrenches stigma, myths, false beliefs, and misconceptions about suicide. Because there's quite, and I think all of us agree, a lot of misconception around suicide, a lot of myths, a lot of false beliefs, and a lot of misconceptions. So when it is codified in law, this also entrenches that belief, because people say, okay, it's a crime, so it must be like this or like this. So and like I said, it also prevents people who are at risk struggling with suicide feelings or ideation from seeking help. Then the other thing is suicide is seen as a legal and issue rather than an issue that requires treatment or other interventions. And then also families and relatives are stigmatized. Your parent or your sibling died, or your grandmother or whatever it is died of suicide, then that stigma carries on to you by association. And that's why part of the work we also do is with survivors of stigma loss, those who've lost relatives and friends because of suicide. People start blaming you. Oh, why didn't you help? Why didn't you speak out? Why didn't you intervene? And that kind of thing, and that also contributes to stigma. And then so criminalization also less investment and focus on suicide prevention. And I'll talk about suicide prevention in terms of what's happening now currently. But I think if you go back a decade or more ago, issues around suicide prevention and response were not given much attention because it was seen as a criminal issue, not a public health issue. So there were no investments. There was no, in terms of even developing policies, in terms of prevention, in terms of treatment and access and other interventions.
Oyoko,
Yeah.
there's a comment that your voice is low.
Oh,
Maybe if you could raise it up a little bit, thank you. But there are questions on the chat, but I think maybe once you're done, if that's okay with you.
yeah. Because I can't see the chat now because I'm presenting,
Sure.
so I'll see it once I'm done.
Sure. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. I hope I'm more audible now. So now let's look now in terms of the process of decriminalization of suicide in Kenya, and it has been a process that started with a wide range of actors. In 2023, the Chief Justice proposed a bill to Parliament to decriminalize suicide attempts. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has also done quite a lot. And they were one of the petitioners in this. I think the major petitioner in this in the case. And if you recall, during the Shakahola investigation by the Senate, you remember that committee that the Senate constituted to investigate the Shakahola massacres and deaths. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights made a very strong presentation in terms of decriminalization of suicide to that committee. So in 2022, a case was instituted in the High Court, and this was Kenya National Commission on Human Rights and two others, including Charity Muturi, who we mentioned earlier, against the Attorney General. And then we had the Director of Public Prosecutions and three others as interested parties. You can see there, I won't go into the details of the parties of the case. This is available on the Kenya Law Reporting website. But I think for the purposes of our webinar today, the three issues that were decided that the court needed to make a decision on were: one, whether Section 226, or as read with Section 36 of the Penal Code, that criminalized attempted suicide was unconstitutional for violating the rights to dignity, equality, freedom from discrimination on the basis of health and disability. And the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights took a very strong position on this because suicide ideation, even if you look at the literature from the Ministry of Health, is defined as as an issue of mental health, a mental health issue. And when now the Constitution of Kenya, I think most of you are familiar, talk about a right to health. So the petitioners felt this penal code was inconsistent with provisions on the right to health, and also on disability, because the Ministry of Health also has a classification on mental disabilities, and one of them is suicide ideation. Suicide ideation is the when you then begin to have thoughts and feelings about suicide attempts, or harming yourself with a goal of dying. So the petitioner said, on the basis of the constitutional provisions around right to health and suicide ideation being a public health issue, and also classified as a disability, and also because some of the mental health disorders are classified as disabilities, and people who have some, like I stated earlier, who have some of the mental health disabilities are also predisposed to suicide because of their conditions or disorders. The other issue for determination was whether the crime of attempted suicide was unconstitutional on the basis of denying survivors highest attainable standards of health, as the stigmatization associated with the crime hindered victims from seeking help. So, like I said earlier, for those who had suicide attempts, then what happens to them? Because if it is criminalized, then they are taken to the criminal justice system. They are supposed to be prosecuted by the police and the DPP, instead of them getting the interventions they need in terms of health intervention. So the issue was: is this criminalization of suicide? Is it denying survivors of suicide attempts health, access to health, in terms of the kind of services they need to get out of that situation, and also preventing them from seeking help? Because if you feel that your health is not that you're not going to get treatment. But also, this also one of the things that happened, and which also happened to me, is the insurance refused to pay, because they said that was self-inflicted, and many insurance policies, many insurance companies don't cover suicide attempts, because for them it's not only is it a crime, but it's also something that is self-inflicted instead of a mental health issue. So that's one of the exclusions that they have. And one of the things we are trying to do is to talk to insurance companies to recognize that it is a mental health, it's a health issue like any other health issue, and then they should be able to cover it. They should not exclude it from coverage. Then the other thing is whether persons who attempted suicide would be deemed to be suffering from a mental illness and thus lacking intention to commit the crime of attempted suicide. So mens rea is a term in law. I'm not a lawyer, but it's a term that where you are. I'll explain it as best as I understand it. Is where you are liable for a crime because at the time you're committing it, you are conscious of what you're doing. So one of the issues was: is it when you are in a situation where you're doing suicide, when you have suicide ideation and are thinking of harming yourself, are you in the state of mind that can be defined as stable enough to so that then the crime of suicide can be attributed to you? Are you in your right mind, so to speak, at that time, at that particular time? But let me also point out that, as I indicated earlier, not all suicides are a consequence of mental health disorder or condition. I think all of us know that, and part of the stigma is anytime somebody dies by suicide or has a suicide attempt, especially on social media, you say, "Oh, depression is real," or mental illness, or that kind of thing. Some suicide are caused by life crisis, as I indicated. So there might not be an underlying mental illness associated with suicide or suicide attempts, but it could be a crisis. But of course, it's an issue of mental health because you are at that point that you want to have the suicide attempt or suicide. Your reasoning and judgment is impaired. Is impaired. You're not at the in the normal frame of mind frame of mind. So the issue was when you attempt suicide, are you deemed to be in the right frame of mind? And I think most of us agree that it's not the right frame of mind. So those are the three issues that the High Court was asked to determine, and so this was the determination of the case by Justice Mugambi in the High Court on January 9th. So the court recognized that Section 2 of the Mental Health Act defined a person with mental illness as a person diagnosed by a qualified mental practitioner to be suffering from a mental illness, including a person diagnosed with alcohol or substance use disorder, and more crucially, a person with suicidal ideation or behavior. So it covers the Section 2 of the Mental Health Act covers two things. One is a person who has an underlying mental health illness or condition, which has been diagnosed using the diagnostic criteria that is agreed upon by mental health professionals, but also someone who is perhaps not having an underlying mental health illness, but is exhibiting suicidal ideation or behavior. So the court said if the penal code was to remain, all these people were deemed to be suffering from a mental illness. I hope that point is understood. So then the court also held that suicide ideation was a mental health issue, and therefore not what it called a willed act. That is, that it was something that at that point your mind and judgment is impaired, and so you're not in the right frame of mind. You're not acting quote unquote normally. You're not. So suicide ideation, which is, I said, is the feeling that you want to harm yourself and die, and try and the actions and the thinking around how you're going to go about it and that kind of thing. That's what the court said. So the court said these people who have suicide ideation or feelings are not criminals. It's a health issue, and they have no capacity to be held liable. What they call mens rea. They're not in the frame of mind that the intention to commit the offense can be attributed to them. The thoughts and judgment. Yeah.
Oyoko,
Yes.
I think as you're explaining, your voice is going lower and lower. Maybe you might want to maintain.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know. Sorry. Yeah. So
I'm seeing some comments that you need to move next to the mic, or maybe, I don't know, maybe when you start, you're starting well, but as you continue, I think your voice is going lower. Kindly.
I'm not actually using the whatever the earphone, so I don't understand. It's just next to my mouth. Okay, I'll try. Yeah. So suicide ideation. Uh, the court said was a mental health issue and not an issue that was that would be called was a willed act by a human being of sound mind. And the point I was making is that at the time, and I said there's suicide attributed to an underlying mental illness or condition, but there are also others that are attributed to life crisis or situations. But the court said ideation in itself, at that point when someone is in the position where they think that the course of action that they need to take is to harm themselves with the intention to die, at that point, your judgment, your thinking, your behavior is impaired, so that you cannot be held legally accountable for your actions because you are not your proper self, so to speak. So that was the significant finding by the High Court. So the third, one of the other significant thing that the court also said was Section 226 of the Penal Code offended Section 27, which talks about the right to health. So it also undignified and disgraced victims of suicide ideation in the eyes of the community. And now you can see here, the court was able to see the link between criminalization of suicide attempts and the stigma and discrimination that um, survivors face, either by the criminal justice system in terms of taking you to prosecuting you, because that's also institutional stigma, or stigma by the health facilities and the insurance companies, but also stigma by the community. So the court was able to look at the context of how criminalization of suicide attempts also has an impact to beyond just being taken to jail or being prosecuted. It has an impact beyond that to other areas and preventing people from seeking help. And so the order that the court made was very simple. That Section 226 of the Penal Code was unconstitutional for violating those articles of the Constitution. So as we stand now from January 9th to 2025, uh, Section 226 has been declared unconstitutional and is not part of Kenyan law. It's a constitutional principle that any law that is not consistent with the Constitution is unconstitutional to the extent of that inconsistency. So since the Constitution is the primary is a basic law, all other laws must adhere to the Constitution, and the court held that this law was not adhering to the Constitution of Kenya 2010 in aspects related to right to health, in related to issues around disability rights, in also in relation to whether a person who has suicide ideation is capable of committing an offense. And yeah, so that is the basically the ruling of the court. So then begs the question now, so what? It has been decriminalized. So what next? One of the things is, and as I indicated earlier, is and that's why we looked at the genesis of criminalization of of, um, of suicide attempts uh, is that it prevents people struggling with suicide ideation or survivors of suicide attempts can now seek help without fear of prosecution. So if you go to a hospital or wherever you want to speak, wherever you want to seek help, the threat of being arrested and being prosecuted or getting involved in the criminal justice system for whatever reason is no longer on the cards. Then, because criminalization of suicide fuels stigma and discrimination, removing these harmful punitive laws on suicide will encourage health-seeking behaviors. Help, it's help-seeking, not health-seeking. Help-seeking behaviors. It also encourages people to speak openly about issues around suicide and suicide prevention, and have a productive discussion. So the issue around this issue you're discussing is a crime, is no longer on the table, and people can. There's an opportunity for us to discuss this more openly and look at solutions from a public health and community intervention rather than a criminal justice intervention. So declaration also provides opportunities for the implementation of preventative and policy measures and other interventions. So we have the National Suicide Prevention Strategy, which was published, I think, by the Ministry of Health, Division of Mental Health last year. And I would encourage all of us to, it's on the website, all of us to look at it if you're interested in the subject. So now the strategy, I think, is the opportunities for implementation of the strategy are now immense. And one of the things out of the strategy is the National Suicide Prevention Committee, and this is what I was talking about. I serve in the treatment access subcommittee. And so, like I said, one of the things we're now doing is we're developing a surveillance system. Surveillance system means looking at gathering data and information about suicide, including deaths by suicide, and designing strategies on how do we capture that data, how do we get people like the registrar of deaths, the various hospitals, police stations, because sometimes they're the first responders in terms of and the mortuaries and others. How do we get together to have a system where we can input this data on an ongoing basis and get accurate data. The other thing also looking at is in terms of suicide prevention, what are the various interventions that can be done at policy level, at facility level, at community level, in workplaces, and family level for suicide prevention, because prevention is our best strategy. It's cheapest and is the most effective strategy. Also looking at public education, how do we work towards removing the misconceptions, the myths, the taboos around suicide, so that then we can have an open discussion and understand what suicide is and how we can help others. And also looking at treatment access. I was serving the treatment access subcommittee, looking at how do we access help and intervention. Treatment is a wide spectrum of interventions. How do we get people to get help, especially for survivors? Then yeah, so I think that basically is it for my presentation. So this once again, these are the resources that are available in terms of suicide prevention. To be good to have them. I think I don't know whether Salma will share the presentation, but these are some of the people who are trying to help suicide prevention and crisis response. Thank you very much. Over to you, Salma.
Thank you so much, Oyoko. That was quite insightful, quite educative. And I'm so sure if maybe some of us didn't know the journey now are very conversant with the many struggles and the gains that we've had. So there are a few questions, Oyoko, on the chat. So if I may read for you, and others I'll throw to one of the psychologists that also is in the room. So let me start. No, that the first one was down here. Yeah, so issues of the slides. Yes, we shall share the slides and the recordings. So you shall be expecting an email from our comms person, that is Joanna Ching. Normally, that's what we do. We share the slides and the recordings, even if you want to read more. So there was one from Geoffrey. Is suicide categorized under criminal offense in Kenya? So I'll read a few, Oyoko, and then you respond to them again. How will you advise? This one I think I'll throw to a psychologist, so I posed that. Then there was one from Steve, and he was asking, what do you mean by factual language? So then from Daisy Mayo, what happened to individuals who were already serving sentences for attempted suicide following the decriminalization of suicide in Kenya? I mean, are they still behind bars and stuff? So which category is suicide? Like, is it a capital offense? Okay, those were concerns around volume. So what, Lynette? Okay. What are your thoughts on this one? Normally defeats me when I'm reading. I don't know if I'll be pronouncing it right. Oyoko, are you able to read? You are from Lynette, that word.
I'm trying to see where it is in the chart. What do you mean by factual language? Then
From
okay,
Lynette, that word, Makikuyu, and my tongue can just slide.
euthanasia or
Yes,
euthanasia.
I can
Okay.
read. I can read some things, and I think this one I'll throw it to the psychologist in the house. So there's that. So those two I'll throw to the psychologist. Then there was, I think, even Mariam. I think Mariam, I'll give you a chance so that you ask this question, because I saw you had raised your hand. So this one, I think, I don't know if that's what you wanted to do, because you had raised your hand when Oyoko was presenting. So there were concerns there. Then, still from Dan is, how does criminalizing, Oyoko, you're able to read, right?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
do you
able to read.
want to, yeah, okay, so do
Yeah.
you want to respond to,
Yeah. Let me
uh,
respond, and then in case I miss something, you might be able to tell me.
sure, okay.
I think the first question was whether suicide is categorized as a criminal offense. I think I answered that in my presentation. Yeah, suicide up to January 9th, 2025, it was an offense under section 226 of the Penal Code. But like I said, the High Court expunged it from our laws. So it's no longer an offense for being unconstitutional. Then the other issue is, what do you mean by factual language? What I mean factual language is language that is not judgmental, judgment that deals with the facts as they are. So when you say unsuccessful suicide, so then you are, what you're basically saying is that the death was the outcome that everybody was hoping for, and then someone was not successful. That doesn't help in terms of reducing stigma. Um, Also, yeah, so I think factual language is just sticking to basic factors. What is suicide? What are its causes? How does it present? And that kind of thing, instead of avoiding being judgmental and stigmatizing populations. Um, there's a question about those who are already serving sentences. That's a very uh, that's a very important question. Um, and I'm not a lawyer, but I think in my view, those sentences, those people should be released if it's no longer an offense. But I'm not a lawyer, so I can't definitively, I'm sorry, answer that. But, hello, Unasikia? Hello?
Yeah,
Oh, I
Oyoko,
thought
we
somebody.
can hear you. No, we can hear you.
I think somebody are not muted. Yeah. So in terms of that, I may not give a definitive answer, but I'll maybe check with the lawyers, and then maybe you're doing the email. You can also add it to the to the to the slides and find out. But in my view, their sentences should be set aside. Maybe there could be a space for an appeal, or just the better thing, I think, just for those sentences somehow to be removed. So that one was on category of suicide. What was that category? Salma, can you see it? Something about category. Okay, I think I'll come to that. Let me check in the chat. I'll come to that. Then from Dan, how does criminalization affect individuals struggling with mental health issues? Like I said, it prevents people from seeking help. It prevents those who should be helping from providing the help, because now you have to deal with the police and the ODPP instead of dealing with the mental health professionals and other people who can help you. Alternative approaches to punishment exist. What alternative approaches to punishment exist for those who attempt suicide? I think our position is that this should not be punished at all. It's not a criminal. It's not a criminal justice problem. It is a public health problem, and the court agreed with that. If the Ministry of Health has categorized suicide ideation as a mental health issue, so and mental health is or mental illness or whatever it is, like an illness like any other. So when you have malaria, you're not arrested. So when someone has suicide ideation, there shouldn't be any punishment. How can criminalization improve mental health and suicide prevention in Kenya? I covered that. I think one is enabling service providers and those who want to intervene to provide the services, reducing stigma, and also it also helps in terms of suicide prevention strategies in the community and in our families. What role does stigma play in preventing people from seeking help? It's one of the major barriers to people seeking help is a stigma, and stigma, I think, Dan, is very entrenched in Kenya, as you know, in our society, as you know. So people who have suicide attempts are seen as weak, are seen as people who go against taboos, religious taboos, cultural taboos, other taboos, and so it's something that is not even within families not discussed, even within communities not discussed. So if someone dies of suicide, people try to even hide it, and others. So that whole situation creates the environment where people don't seek help. What strategies are implemented to reduce suicide rates in Kenya post decriminalization? Yeah, I covered. I think it would be good to look at the National Suicide Prevention Strategy, which is the key strategy by the Ministry of Health, and which we are trying to implement, looking at issues around surveillance and research. Like I said, just finding out the magnitude of the problem, what are the risk factors in the various demographics and communities. Are there counties that have high rates? Are there counties where maybe it's the youth who, like for example, from anecdotal data, we know that some counties, from what you see on the media, some counties who seem to exhibit high rates of suicide, especially among young men. So just finding out like what's going on, really, what's going on with these communities, what's going on with these counties, what are the root causes, so that then you can also look at prevention, because like I said, prevention is our best strategy. But also looking at responses. How do you access help there? Because right now the crisis response are mostly NGOs, but can we also have our county governments and national governments also involved in crisis response? In the Nairobi County Assembly, there was a motion in Parliament in 2023 to have a crisis response for suicide in Nairobi. So there are various strategies that can be implemented. It's not a one fit all. It's a myriad of strategies, and also even the actors. It's us as people who work in the community. It's the service providers like Salma. It's the policymakers. It's the the facilities. It's everybody playing a role. It's something that all of us need to be get involved in. Let me see down the chat whether there's another question.
As
So
you're
what impact?
also as you're also checking, the one that you had missed out on, Oyoko, is suicide categorized under criminal offense? I think that's what you're looking for.
Yes. Yeah. Well, like I said, it was criminalized as a criminal offense since 1930, and then the court removed it from the penal code. What impact does criminalization have on law enforcement and legal processes? That is done again. I think. I think maybe I've answered that. The impact is in terms of removing the criminal justice system from what is a public health issue. Is there any record of the first person to die by suicide, their gender and circumstances? I don't know, because this is something as old as us, as human beings. But I think suicide is an issue in all communities. How do we contact the Suicide Prevention Committee? I can put my email. I'm not representative of the committee, but in case you have any issue, I can also share with the Suicide Prevention Coordinator the email. What is the Gazette notice for the expunged law? I'm not so sure it has been gazetted. Yeah, I think that's it. I think the other questions were for the psychologists. I experienced 2 cases before. I think that one, but they end up committing suicide. My question is, does it mean once you tried, you'll do it? That's Felix. Yeah, and I think also we are avoiding the language of committing suicide. I think it's death by suicide, as I indicated. Like maybe you had not joined the meeting. But yes, like I said, having an suicide attempt predisposes you to more attempts if there's no intervention. So if somebody, it happens to somebody once, they're more predisposed to again another attempt. Yes, I think the rest may be by psychologists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oyoko, but you're not leaving. You're still with us here because we still have some 30 more minutes for people even to ask more questions. But at this juncture, just allow me to read 2 questions for, I think I saw Kibuja join in. So Kibuja, please just help us respond to these 2 questions. How will you advise or handle a person you feel like helping who has suicide attempt? That is one. So the other one also is from Lynette. What are your thoughts, or Oyoko, what is this word you told me? How do you pronounce it? Euthanasia. Before I start saying my things in Kikuyu.
Euthanasia.
Euthanasia, yes, particularly in the case of chronic pain and terminal illnesses. So Kibuja, if you may just unmute kindly.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Kibuja,
Hello?
we can hear you. Yes, Kibuja.
Yeah, these are very deep questions. And when it comes to matters of suicide, the thing many people rush to do, which is not recommended, is quickly to advise the person who has attempted. And sometimes force hope on them, force some religious verses on them. It is encouraged that you listen. The person who has undergone that experience, you give them space to share. Listening is the biggest asset you can offer to them. Then upon listening, try, you can ask.
Kibuja, we are losing you. We didn't get you. The last word we had.
You're losing me?
Yeah, we lost you. We left you. You left us at you try. That's where you left us at. You left us at.
Okay, sorry. I shared one. The biggest asset is listening. That we listen to both the spoken and the unspoken. Then we also create an environment of safety for them not to feel judged. So you don't unleash religious quotes on them with the hope that you are inspiring them. Sometimes they can depress them more. Then we try to inquire what is their feeling? What do they feel like doing? What thoughts are crossing their minds? And when they've given you a good sharing, you try to get their position on seeking help, because they need to seek help. And propose that they take help. And help could come in many ways. There are times it may just need psychological intervention. Sometimes it may need additional medical intervention. So take them through the process, let them know that, and encourage them to seek. Be warm and show your interest in accompanying them through that journey, so that they know that you are willing to walk with them to hospital and back. And if they feel comfortable going alone, don't impose yourself on it. Mostly, as the previous speaker has just spoken, before a person reaches that level of attempting suicide, there are normally some telltale signs, some early warning signs that people do ignore. So it is important also to think about prevention before the person reaches that level. So in most cases, the events that happen that take them to depression could be made over time. That push. Hello?
Yeah, we lost you again.
Hello, I'm at. Oh my, where was I? Where did you lose me from?
Don't impose yourself on them. Please take it from them.
Hello, where was I when you lost me?
Yeah, kindly just take it from don't impose yourself on them, and then you can continue. Sorry. Kibuja? Hello?
Yes, if they don't feel like going with you to hospital, don't force that journey. Allow them to go. Above all, also, hello, am I audible?
You're on and off. You're on and off.
Sorry, I'm not at a place with good network. I hope you're hearing me now.
Yes, now just stand where you are, or sit where you just at now.
All right. So it's important to also address the early warning signs, because it doesn't just come. Look at what are some of the telltale signs that happened before the person attempted. Sometimes they say it, they say they will do it, we ignore. Sometimes you notice they are isolating. Sometimes you notice they are crying a lot. Sometimes you notice anger pangs. Sometimes you notice certain inconsistency in their behavior patterns. It's important to assess that. Then, most of all, encourage them to seek help. On euthanasia, I wish to share that euthanasia is not suicide. You know, euthanasia and suicide are two different things. And euthanasia is where you realize the patient is at a point where either the disease has hurt them so much, or the doctors see no hope of them coming back to life. Then they propose euthanasia. Or sometimes the person will eventually die, and the hospital is taking a lot of money on life support machine on them. So when doctors recommend that, I think it's a good thing to take it, because eventually we will die. So we need to prepare ourselves that someday we will leave this world. Thank you.
Kibuja, you're not off the hook yet. There's another question. As a psychologist, what are the potential mental health implications of decriminalizing suicide in Kenya, both for individuals involved and for society at large? How can we ensure that mental health support systems are adequately prepared to address these implications? And what role can psychology play in the public discourse around this issue? It's quite a big one, but I hope you got it. Kibuja?
Yes, I got it. And I wish to confirm that we don't behave well because the law stipulates. We inherently have that good manner, and then the law helps us to sustain it. You know, there's that fear that when we decriminalize it, then many young people, many old people will be more. It is not true. It is a condition within us that causes us to attempt suicide. And of course, as the previous speaker said, death by suicide is beyond the deceased. So laws don't threaten us from doing things. It is what we believe and what we are socialized in, and our convictions and our perceptions that make us behave the way we do. In the case of suicide, let's agree that it's a patient we are talking about. It's just like saying if we put laws on criminalizing malaria, then less people will contract malaria. So let's look at it as a disease, then look at it as something of societal concerns, so that we see how, even as parents, we push our children to have suicidal ideation. Even in school environments, what is it that pushes children towards suicidal ideation? Even in our religious places, what is it? Even in, and when I'll echo more about religion, because sometimes if you are not seen standing up to go and give offering or tithe, you get labeled, and that brings you down, and those are things that could depress you. If we force children to score A's, we are putting too much pressure on them to go towards that direction. So irrespective of law, we have behaved in a manner to encourage the environment. So even in marriages, how do we push our spouses to suicidal ideation? And ironically, most studies that have been conducted show that a good number of females that have attempted suicide or died of suicide are from the ages of 45 to 65. Those are real mature people. So when we talk about suicide, let's not think about it as children. And a good number of men also go from 50 years to about 64 years. So suicide is not something for the youth and the young. Even adults, mature adults, go through it. So it is the environment we create for each other, an environment of safety. And it calls for us to be each other's keeper. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Kibuja. Always a pleasure. Allow me I saw Mariam, your hand has been up. Do you want to ask your question? You can unmute and go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I have 3 things to say. So the first one was about the law. The last time I practiced law, I'm a lawyer, but I don't practice. The law doesn't act retroactively, or rather it acts retroactively. So the people who are in jail right now for when it was a criminal offense might have to repeal or to have their laws revealed, make them not criminals. It's not a blanket statement, like it will not happen automatically. The way to go about it could be through repeal or having their cases reviewed as at now. And I stand to be corrected, but that's last time I studied, that is what we learned. The other question I had, maybe to Kibunja, is one of the reasons why people commit suicide. And for me personally, having attempted suicide multiple times, tried suicide or attempted. This wording is something we'll have to learn, so forgive me. I was doing it because I was in distress and I was thinking that death is escape. I wanted to escape the pain. So do you think it's a reasonable place for people, as even they are seeking healing, to understand that death is not an escape? So now I'm practicing Hindu, and in Hinduism, we believe that there is reincarnation. So death is actually not an escape. When this pain right now, you will come back and find it where you left it. So do you think it's also another curbing the suicide, when people are told, by the way, death is not an escape, hakuna mahali unaenda, utarudi tu. So when they see that is not the route, because that's what the mind is telling them, get out of this pain. If they know that it's not an escape, do you think it would reduce the numbers? And the second question was, on Twitter, came back, there is a lady who was sharing her experience. She walked into the room. She described it as this. She walked into the room and found her roommate hanging from she had hung herself, and she was explaining her trauma. And when the first slide, we were taught that it's not good to say these things out loud, but then I failed to see how that is going to help if she kept this to herself or to her therapist. How is that? I feel like that would have helped more people see what the impact of suicide is, so to bring the realness of it for anyone who must have been attempting it, to see the trauma it causes the people who are left behind. So it's actually more helpful than hurtful.
Before I bring in Kibuja, Mariam, thank you for that. That I think also you've shared clarity on the process, and the question was asked about the people who already have been sentenced. What happens? So thank you for that. And before Kibuja comes in, could you also help us respond to this question on the chat box? I believe euthanasia is illegal in Kenya. Kindly guide. Now with your expertise, please also speak into this, and then Kibuja now will come to again now with the response. If you may, Mariam. Mariam Rose.
You mean that they can now answer my question?
No, there is a question. We're trying also to tap on the results in the room, and you said you're a lawyer, and there was a question that was posed on the chats that someone was saying, I believe euthanasia is illegal in Kenya. Kindly guide. So with your legal expertise, please just help us just respond to that. Is it or is it not?
Last I checked, it was illegal. It was illegal, but I can also.
Okay, thank you. And as we said, you can still benefit from this knowledge. You can maybe share with us, as also we are sharing the slides and the recording. We can share all that together with the participants. So thanks. So Kibuja? Kibuja?
Oh, sorry, you're also cracking. Now, I feel you. I feel you, Marion, and thanks for trusting the space to share your experience. Eventually, it is what society has packaged as failure that pushes a good number of people towards suicide. What society has packaged so much as shameful pushes people towards that ideation. What has been packaged as a source of guilt. Now, when you do something, you'll notice many people would share this phrase that I just wished the earth would open and swallow me. You know, when you've done something very embarrassing. There's this feeling, and they are called Eros and Thanatos. And Sigmund Freud says human beings desire peace. And as a consequence, they desire death. You know, just seeing the peace that comes with the death. But this story of reincarnation is a good story. I don't want to engage in religious confrontation. And I also want to share that your life on earth should be so nice that you admire thy kingdom come, so that build a positive outlook of yourself. Sometimes we listen so much to what people tell us that we have very little room to listen to what we are telling ourselves. You know, Kibunja is listening to what everybody is telling him, but he's not sitting down to find time to listen to what is Kibunja telling himself. So most of the clients I've had that have attempted suicide mostly were doing it to cover the embarrassment from their family, to cover the pain they could have caused a dear one, to cover. You know, they are not doing it for themselves, or sometimes they do it so that it doesn't happen again.
Kibuja?
Salma, may I say something?
Yes, please.
High
Yeah, as we wait for Kibuja.
levels of self-awareness, attempts to suicide. Like, do I live for? And the answer.
Yes, Oyoko, you can
Hello?
proceed. We had lost you, Kibuja. So, Oyoko, please just come up like Kibuja.
Oh, all right. So basically, when you're able to answer the question, who do I live for? And the answer is, I live for myself. Then you start seeing beauty in yourself, and you start finding purpose to please yourself more. Thank you.
So I just like to.
Yeah, Oyoko, you can come in.
Yeah, I just like to respond to Miriam in terms of discussions around suicide. I think that the point I was trying to make is not that we should not be discussing suicide, but I think we should discuss suicide in a way that that is safe and does not cause more harm. Because there's abundant evidence and research has been done around this, around the phenomenon of what they call the copycat suicides, when especially among adolescents. So when or it's also copycat suicides or suicide contagion or suicide emulation. So when there, say, somebody who is well known or admired among, especially adolescents and young people, and they die by suicide, and it's reported in the media with a lot of graphic details. there's a spike in suicides among certain demographics, even in fiction, even in fiction work, movies, or whatever it is. That causes has been shown to contribute to the phenomenon of suicide contagion, or suicide emulation, or copycat suicides. So I think all of us, we called upon to discuss this in a manner that does not contribute, that does not harm others, in a safe manner. So even in terms of, one of the things we're trying to work out, we've been trying to also in the suicide prevention space, is talk to our media. Whenever they report in suicide, they go into a lot of details, and those, and graphic details, and the motive, and sharing the notes, whatever somebody wrote or said, or that kind of thing, and that, if somebody is in distress, that might trigger them to go to the edge in terms of suicide. And when you're sharing your stories, you're not, unless you're sharing with a professional, I think that's then maybe you can discuss it. That's a different space. But when you are sharing in public, and there might be people who are suffering distress or undergoing crisis or whatever it is, that's not usually recommended, and it doesn't, it has a potential to cause more harm than good, and like I said, there's quite a number of research that has been done on that subject. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Allow me to just put a rider on that.
Okay.
That it's somebody who has good intentions for you. Share with a friend that you know will not use it against you. Share it with somebody you feel safe with, and don't proclaim it to any other person. There's also that feeling you feel like telling every other person. And don't share it on social media, because you will get responses, some of them that are very demeaning and can sink you further into the feeling. Thanks a lot.
Thank you too. And maybe just another rider to that is when you share out there, sometimes we are not in control of how far that information can go and how it can come back also to hunters. So I think the last question is from Steve Biko. Oyoko, maybe you might want to respond to this. What about the notion? I think this came after you are responding to Mariam. What about the notion that someone who wants to die by suicide will not say, and that when someone threatens others with suicide, it's a bluff? Oyoko?
No, I don't know whether the psychologists might want to respond to this, because I'm not a professional in that. I'm an advocate, but I think I can just say is that any, as Alfred says, when someone has suicide ideation, they usually signs that we might not, that we might need to understand. And the other thing you also say in suicide prevention is that any ideation, even if it is expressed verbally, should be taken seriously. And I know in our context, usually when somebody expresses a wish or says something around that, we don't take it seriously, or we mock them, or we do other things. But I think any intention, any expression of an intention to self-harm should be taken seriously, and that person should be listened to, and hopefully channeled towards the help that they deserve. It's a cry for, we don't say it's a cry for help. It's somebody saying, I'm undergoing this, or this is happening to me, I need help. So it's not a bluff, but I think even if it was, let's be on the side of caution. Let's seek to understand what that person is undergoing, and and so that they can get help.
Kibuja, you want to also weigh in?
I think Oyoko has answered.
Okay. I think we are coming to the tail end of today's session.
He has answered it. Who
Proceed. It's okay. Go ahead.
wish attempt suicide don't say it. Sometimes they may not have both communication lead towards the anger pangs.
We lost you, Kibuja.
And in most cases, who appear very happy.
We didn't hear you from the start. Please just take it up.
Okay, sorry. I'm saying that I wish to agree with all that the speaker said. And I also want to add that it is not true that people who want to commit suicide just zoom there. There are things that happen that we fail to notice. So some of them is not spoken, some of them is. And when it is spoken, sometimes we rubbish it, and it's very important to follow it up. Then I saw another question on the difference between ideation and attempted. There's a thin line between the two, but in most cases, ideation could end at the mind and at a threat. Attempted could mean the person has already ingested the substance to commit suicide, or the action that would propel suicide. So ideation sometimes is cognitive, but attempted, normally the action has been taken. So ideation is more of an umbrella word. Thanks.
Thanks to Kibuja. Wow. I think there's a comment. There is need to ensure Parliament amends the legislation to have the specific clause repealed. Much as it is declared unconstitutional, there is need to have it removed from the Act. On the aspect of those already sentenced, the law was unconstitutional at the time of the conviction. It does not act retrospectively. However, the Act once amended will guide, and the court can also guide. Some may have been sentenced with more than one count, thus a retrial, review in sentencing, or a release order could be issued by the court. So each case is subject to its own merit. Thank you so much for that. I think you're also shedding more light on the question therein on what happened to the people who are already convicted. So thank you so much, Hisham, for that. I think this has been a very insightful, very educative, very interactive session, and we've stayed till the end, and we really appreciate. I hope we've learned something. I hope it will improve how we look at ourselves, how we look at other people. I hope also we've been empowered to become passionate, to be kind, to be warm to other people, because we just don't know what we are all struggling with or dealing with. So allow me just to read one comment from Dr. Mushai. She said, this is a really rich discussion. Have really appreciated the historical background of the laws and also exploring the different standpoints people come to these issues from. And then, of course, Naomi Baraza, absolutely rich. So thank you so much for the invitation. And please, colleagues, you can still interact with us on our social media platforms. We keep posting resources, materials, conversations that we normally have. And of course, I think there's a place where Oyoko had indicated if you also need psychological help, Wellness Resource Hub is your place. Sometimes it's just not even, because we have this notion that you must be in a mental disturbed place to be able to seek help. sometimes also it's around validation. I mean, am I just on the right track? And it's just conversations that we can keep having. Yes, there are people who are asking if we'll share the notes. Yes, we shall. We shall share the presentations and the recordings on the emails that you registered with. And please also let us know which other topics that also you think we can be having conversations around. So keep engaging us on our social media platforms. And now some of us have, you have our numbers, you have our email addresses. Please, let's just keep talking and let's just keep having, let's keep normalizing seeking help and just being kind to one another. Asanteni sana and God bless you.